Again, there's 9 engines, so we'll just keep moving through and let you hear some of it. You'll notice that I'm making use of, too, a huge new feature, which is the set list. So essentially, you can have any combi program or sequence instantly accessible from the front panel, which is super nice. And it's not glitchy at all. You can just immediately go from sequence to program to combi back and forth, and it reacts really well. So that's kind of what I'm using here. So the next engine in that classic keyboard vein is the Poly 6 MS-20. Poly 6 obviously was a huge analog keyboard for us in the 70s. MS-20 we were just talking about, you know, you go on eBay for $2,000 right now if you can get them. So, and since we own these keyboards and we own the schematics in the factory, we can recreate them accurately, as opposed to third party where you're kind of guessing as to what, you know, components were used. So for instance, you know, the Poly 6 here, you got your classic kind of big pad sound. Of course, you've heard that in just about every film imaginable from 1978 on. I should mention too that these real-time controls aren't just here to look pretty. I mean, every sound has been programmed to interact with this. So even if you're not a programmer, you know, you can grab a hold of any physical controller and it's going to alter it in some way. Ribbon controller. The ribbon's great for phrasing for woodwind instruments and stuff. If you don't, I never want to do like the in sync and have like the breath control thing if I'm doing a saxophone. It's not my bag, but you can kind of emulate that with the ribbon. All the controls are always programmed. Everything does something.
Can you have like, for instance, what was it, the wave station? You had that sort of kind of vector control where you could move in and out.
Good question. So this incorporates essentially all the original wave ROM from the wave station, because we released it as software a couple years back. So all of that is incorporated in here too. This is one of the original wave sequences. And yeah, so you can switch between them for sure. That's like that whole world of Peter Gabriel-ish kind of motion stuff. Kronos dominates, as most Korg stuff does in the pad arena. Is crazy. So you got the Poly 6, you also have the MS-20, which of course if you see on the front, you remember the MS-20 was analog patching. So, uh-oh, we're rocking so hard we're falling out our seats. The basses are sick with this.
We're going to have to cut you off now, no more drinks.
It is Cinco de Mayo, I mean, come on. Why wouldn't we?
All right. Yeah, I'm fine.
Let me find oh, here you go. You know how the dubstep thing is? I don't know how big dubstep would be in Nashville, but in LA it's a huge thing, and it's that LFO filtered kind of. It's a huge part of it, and that sound. Of course, that's way too slow, so you have a tap tempo right here. So all of that's in there. You can tap tempo. The filters are sick too.
Hey, Billy.
Real smooth. Again, kind of modeled just out. The filter on the MS-20 is what people buy it for, because they want to run audio through it, like run their turntables through it or run a vocal through it or whatever. So you can do the same thing with Kronos. You can run external audio through the filter of the MS-20, which is great. So from there you've got STR, which is string modeling. That's another engine. So you can take it from the very basic kind of acoustic string stuff, and it's physical modeling, which is different than sample-based synthesis. So you're actually recreating every aspect of the instrument, and then it can be changed. So from realistic instruments, but then you can also kind of go in there and you can create these really crazy. That's a string. But so since you're using physical modeling, you're able to change the pickup and the string and the quality and just really morph it in ways that a physical instrument could never recreate. So that's from the same engine. And then of course you have your traditional So STR sounds great, and you can take it from the simple to the very, very complex and really crazy. So from STR1, then you have the AL1, which is, AL1 is kind of our idea of what an old analog synthesizer should be in the modern era. So let me find an example of that here. So you can use AL1 in a very simple sense, like a piano. Or what I like to do is get it, let's see if I can find that here, for the modulation stuff, right? So you can use the step sequencers, the filters, the modulation. So it's like having an analog synth that you could with endless possibilities. From basses to splits to stabs, all that stuff. There's one in here. Pass it. Bell-like stuff. Chords. Just unlimited amount of stuff. The drums are cool too for like analog stuff. So that's all just one note, one thing being processed. The filter is always the thing, right? It blows up the room. Is there. The filters and the oscillators are super low aliasing, and I mentioned that earlier, which all that means essentially, and probably most of you know, is even the really high stuff is super crystal clear. There's no, usually it'll get a little like, 16-bit sounding when you play the high stuff. Aliasing is a reality for most keyboards just because of the technology, the filters and the converters. But in Kronos and Oasis, that's something that we've really made leaps forward with. So you're going to get really crystalline sounding highs. And speaking of those belly kind of high sounds, the next engine is the Mod 7. And Mod 7 is a programmer's just dream come true. Anybody ever own a DX7 back in the day? Yeah, nice. So they sounded killer, but the programming them was like, okay, so you went to NASA and they couldn't figure it out, so they just pulled up the program.
That's Yamaha.
So this has been made, the carrier operator pairs and all that programming has been made graphical and more like a patch system. So it's actually approachable when it comes to programming. But it gets that FME sound. Which is that, right, exactly. But then you can take from that and you can really get into some way crazier things. For instance, didgeridoo I love. All of that's FM synthesis, which I don't know, but when I was growing up, it was like FM synthesis was always lame to me. It's not so digital, and it didn't have that kind of the balls that analog stuff had. But this kind of changes that, and it's doing variable phase modulation too. So it's more than just FM. You can really get in there and get some crazy textures. And literally, there's hundreds and hundreds of sounds. That's another thing we've improved upon from the original sound set with Oasis. This has almost twice as many programs. So you have, the ear candy is there for sure. So that's a little bit about Mod 7. Certainly there's a lot more. And then of course you have the sample-based set, which is your bread and butter stuff for composing, studio work, all that kind of stuff. So that's called HD1, and that'll be similar to what you're used to in the M3, but expanded with much more articulate sounds. So again, the bread and butter stuff, you got your orchestral, all of it velocity switched. So that stuff's in there. I love this, the Velocity Orchestra. And you'll notice one thing I didn't talk about quite yet, I'll segue into now, is you've got all these great sounds, everything from woodwinds to brass. We've even included, a lot of people wanted to hear the tape-based stuff, like the Mellotron. So we've got all that in there as well. So let me see if I can pull that up really quick, and I'm okay. Let's just get it manually faster that way. So yeah, we got Mellotron tape strings as well as the woodwind stuff, so you can get your stairway on. But the tape stuff's there. Which I love. And you're hearing a lot of cats using it now, kind of going back to it, like with John Medeski using it on his last record and stuff. So all that's there. Literally over 1,000 sounds just in the HD1 category. So that's where you're going to get, you know, all your go-to sounds, from orchestral to even synth stuff. There's a lot of great sampled synths in there, lead synths, all that kind of stuff. But back to using Karma. So for instance, think of Karma like an arpeggiator on steroids. So it's a pattern generator, but most people don't understand how deep and just how much music you can create using Karma. So for instance, back to that combi, that orchestral combi I was using, you know, I'm not the world's best orchestral guy for getting orchestral cues and things. So in this case, I could use Karma just to generate all my musical material. Are being generated, you know, from Karma. Like I say, I usually don't use it in that context. I prefer using it for drum programming. So check it out. Every keyboard has beats. We all know this. Some fatter than others. So you got this beat. In most keyboards, you're going to be sick of this in about a week. You'll hate it, you know. The thing I love about Karma is it's an interactive engine for performance. So I can grab any of these faders and sliders and they're all going to modulate that drum beat in some way. So instead of programming it with the mouse and wasting 5 hours of my life trying to breathe some life into the performance, I can do it on the fly.